So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. Like I said, probably about last week, myself and Mark and Mike and Becca in our office recorded the presentation, and we'll go ahead and we've just kind of found that this way works a little bit better. Everyone on the night of the webinar is a little less nervous, and then we're just here to take your live Q&A. So throughout the presentation, I encourage you to put questions in the chat. If you don't want to put your question out there for everyone, feel free to message me, and I can answer your question anonymously if you're not comfortable doing that. And again, we'll do that at the end. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and load this as board member basics, and then a brief intro to homeowner services as well. So you know, this is board member basics. It's certainly, you know, please don't leave if you have been a board member before. This is good for board members, new and old alike. And that's not talking about age. I'm talking about tenure on the board. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get that loaded up. So thanks again, everyone, for coming, and bear with me as I get this going. All right. Here we go.
Today we'll be talking about a handful of items here for our board member basics and beyond. We'll be touching on your fiduciary responsibility, the board member 101, the preparation for and conducting board meetings, the do's and don'ts of being a board member, as well as some more in-depth information regarding our homeowner services department and how they assist your association. So we're going to talk about fiduciary responsibility, and what does that mean? It basically means that you're doing what's in the best interest of the association at all times, whether that's contracting on behalf of the association, reviewing your financial packets, upholding and enforcing your governing documents, and most importantly, making sure you're treating all your homeowners equally and fairly. So how do you ensure that you're meeting your fiduciary responsibilities as a board member when it comes to getting bids? Do you always go with the lowest price vendor? That's a great question to ask yourself, and not necessarily, because you could have a vendor who comes in extremely low that you've never worked with and it's just too good to be true, and chances are it is. So what you always want to do is anytime you get bids and you have these vendors who you've never worked with who come in extremely low on pricing, make sure you get references and get firsthand reports from other condo associations that have completed like projects. For instance, if you're working with a vendor where they're replacing multiple driveways and the reference is they patched somebody's driveway, obviously that's not a valid reference. So just always keep that in mind and make sure that you are verifying those references so you can make sure you're meeting your fiduciary responsibilities. And most importantly too, when you put things out to bid, make sure you have a scope of work regarding what it is you're going to be bidding on, whether that's painting, asphalt, etc. Because what painting means to property manager Mike Leach could be completely different than what painting means to Joe board member. For instance, your idea of painting could be that it's 2 coats of paint, that they power wash the building, that they replace rotted wood, that they include the soffits and the trim. And to me, painting could mean that they're doing 1 coat of paint, scraping off loose paint, and spot priming. So it's always good to have this scope of work when you're getting into the bidding process. And it's just going to further help doing what's in the association's best interest, therefore meeting your fiduciary responsibility. So there's other things that you have to do to meet your fiduciary responsibility, along with getting bids and reviewing contracts and things like that. And the most important one probably is reviewing your financials on a monthly basis. This does not always just fall onto your treasurer. As a board member, you're being tasked with making decisions on what to do with the association, and you're going to make decision on costs that or expenses the association is going to incur. So reviewing the financials and having an understanding of where you sit financially is going to make your job a lot easier. Along with it is making sure you monitor your accounts receivables and follow your collection policy. You want to make sure you're not treating people unfairly when you're enforcing your receivable policies. More in the way of if you have a homeowner who had a hardship, that you're granting an exception to, whereas you have an owner that nobody likes and they're not paying their dues and you automatically flip them into collections and foreclosure, whereas the owner who had that hardship that you're good friends with got a little bit more slack. You just want to make sure that you're treating everybody fairly and equally, regardless of their individual circumstances. and therefore you'll better meet your responsibilities to the association. Another thing you can do is approve and review your invoices through Vantica. It's very intuitive, very straightforward. Every one of our clients has this option. If you are interested, reach out to your property manager and we can get that set up for you. The one nice thing about reviewing your invoices is just another layer of verification on how money is being spent and verifying that contract signed is what's being charged to the association. As your management company and property managers, we also do that, but it's just that added layer of protection to the association that you can do as a board member / treasurer. So finally, another way to meet those fiduciary responsibilities is making sure you enforce your governing documents, because we see it time and time again where we have board members who tend to not necessarily enforce. Now, enforce doesn't mean be the police or be the Gestapo. Enforcing means if you see a violation, you report that violation. You don't go on the hunt for these violations. If a homeowner reports a violation, you act on it. And ultimately, the responsibility to enforce the governing documents does fall onto the board of directors, and you do need to follow these confines listed within your governing documents. And then finally, what you can do too is update your governing documents as needed to confirm with local, state, and federal law changes. For instance, Wisconsin in 2019 had a new law pushed through in a House bill that changed how disclosure material is to be given out, along with changes required on the executive summary. Had it not been for CAI Wisconsin and great management companies like Prospect Management Company, this would have gotten pushed through and we all would have found out about it after lawsuits started flying. So it's always good to talk with attorneys, talk with your property management, and always look at your governing documents every couple of years and see what you need to do to update them. So by doing those 4 simple things, or 3 simple things, you will greatly improve your success in meeting those fiduciary responsibilities you have to your association. Again, the key here is doing what's in the best interest of the association at all times. And once in a while, that is going to overlap with what's in your own personal best interest, because you're going to benefit from it directly being a board member. But if it's in the best interest of the association, that's okay. If it's not, and it's only in your best interest, maybe you should look at doing something different than what is being discussed. So with that said, I will turn it over to Laura.
Thanks, Mike. As I had said before, I'm Laura Windpassenger, Director of Operations with Prospect. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Board Member 101. Some of the things that we're going to talk about today are understanding your role and responsibilities, how to work with other board members, and working with your management company, and what you can do to ensure a smooth transition with your board, and when boards change over, or even when management companies change over. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. What is the role of the board of directors? So the board basically oversees all of the common areas and general affairs of the association. As your management company, we take direction from the board of directors. So the board is really the one, those are the decision makers. Those are the ones who are in charge. Boards are typically comprised of your board president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and then your members at large. Some boards may operate with, just a few key positions, and, boards may operate different within those positions, but those are generally the way that a board best is set up and best runs your organization. They manage the affairs of the association on behalf of the board of the owners. As you know, the owners elect the board, and then once the board is elected, then the board amongst themselves decide on the positions. And so as far as the time commitment, that can vary. Of course, hiring a management company like Prospect Management is going to help alleviate some of the time constraints that being on a board can put you on, but it's really up to you and how much you take on and how much you're willing to delegate. I mean, we certainly have boards and board members that maybe take on more than they should. We do our best, the board and management company, to try and help move the initiative along, but that's sometimes just personalities too, but we're definitely here to help and make the job of serving on your board of directors easier and a less time constraint. I feel like
especially now that we're taking advantage of the different tools and resources that we have out there, such as RingCentral, how we're coming to you today. It makes the time commitments and just commitment in general to the board much easier. Emails, there's a lot that you can do with email that can make things go much more efficient as well. How can I better understand my roles and responsibilities? The management company, we have tons of good information. I've recently just sent out to a few different boards some CAI materials, and I believe Mike briefly touched on CAI, but if you don't know, CAI is Community Association Institute. That is our professional organization that we belong to, and really where most of your condominium management companies are going to belong, and your managers are going to be certified through. So sorry for the sidebar there. But we've got a ton of great information and materials. Your governing documents are also going to, a lot of the times, outline generally what the expectations are of the different positions. And then the previous position holder, so somebody who may have already served on the board, is going to be a great resource for you as well. Again, each community is different, operates different in your community. You know what works best, and especially too with your personality and the makeup of the board. So it's something that can change and is ever evolving within the positions of a community. Again, I already kind of touched on, but where do we look? The governing documents in the bylaws, it usually explains what your association's founding fathers or mothers had intended when your community was formed. So the board president generally sets the board and annual meeting agendas. Again, as your management company, we are happy to help you, work with you on those, and even set those on your behalf. They generally run the meeting. Most meetings are conducted through Robert's Rules of Order. Again, if you need help with that, we're here to help you, and your manager can assist you in running the meeting as well. And generally speaks for the board and the association. So they're going to be the leader, just like the President of the United States. Main point of contact, generally they're the main point of contact with the property manager. Now again, there are associations where, the president doesn't take on that role, a different position takes on that role, and that's perfectly fine as well. Again, whatever works for you in your community, but by default, generally the board president is our main point of contact. The vice president, they stand in for the president when they're not available. They conduct the meetings in the president's absence, and generally, your best practice for the vice president role would be the person who is next going to assume the president role. They usually are assigned added duties, such as chairing an ad hoc committee. If you don't know what an ad hoc committee is, those are committees that are formed for a specific purpose, like if you're planning on revising your governing documents, or say you've got a special landscape project or some type of special initiative within your community is why you would form an ad hoc committee. Talk to your manager more on what ad hoc committees are and how they can make the workload of the board a little bit lighter. The treasurer is, I feel like a undervalued and underutilized position. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but basically I feel like generally people think that the president is the most important position, and while it is a very important position, I think that for a condo association, it is key that you have a good, solid treasurer who knows your financials, who knows what financials mean and understands them, and has a good working relationship with the management company, with your accountant, so that they're able to report to the board. I mean, of course, your property manager can do that as well, but it's really important, at the end of the day, we're human too, and so our accountant, so it's just another set of eyes that's going to look over everything and make sure all the all the checks and balances are there, and all the, you know, credits equal to debits, and all of your proper funding is there as well. So it's a really important position, and we believe really strongly in that. If your treasurer isn't feeling certain on the financials, you know, we're happy to sit down and review those with the treasurer and the entire board, and, you know, kind of go through the invoice approval process that we do use through our software, Vantiv, as Mike had mentioned before. They're generally going to report on the financial status of the board. Again, the manager can help with that and assist in the annual budget preparation with prospect management. Now, I will say too, we've got the whole spectrum on that as well. We have some associations where, you know, we as your management company really prepare the budget, make recommendations to the board, and then there's some associations where the treasurer takes on that entire task. So treasurer, again, can be involved when you have professional management like prospect. Treasurer can be involved as much or as little as they would like. But again, like as I mentioned before, should understand the financial reporting process. Quick side note is, as you may have noticed, I'm not the best at following these PowerPoint presentations. I just kind of so the secretary is the official record keeper for the association. It is really important that you have a solid secretary in place. If you're a first-time secretary, this is your first time joining the board in a secretary position, let us know. We've got here again tons of templates that in our library that we can help you with. So and tools and tips and tricks for formulating the minutes. Minutes should accurately reflect the business decisions taken at the meeting. So many times people feel that your minutes turn into you know, paragraphs and a complete play-by-play of every detail of the meeting, and that is not the purpose of the minutes. The minutes should only contain the business that was conducted at the meeting. If you're looking to talk about, you know, general things that took place during the meeting, or, you know, announcements to the association, a newsletter or notes from the board is a great way to communicate those things to your association. Personal comments, he said, she said, again, are in conversations, not a part of the minutes. And the minutes must be approved by the board in order to be official. I cannot encourage boards enough to please review and approve the minutes officially before posting them and distributing them to the association. It just, even though you can use the watermark draft, it can just get confusing and convoluted, especially when it comes to, you know, keeping the records of the association. And when people are reviewing documents for purchase, it can just create some confusion and get misinformation out there that wasn't approved. So working with other board members. So just like in anything, a lot of the times, especially a lot of the times, I feel like people who run for the board have strong personalities. They get involved, they want to help, they want to change, they want to make a difference. And so it's important to look at yourself and know what knowledge can you bring to the board and how will the experience help you grow. As your management company, we're going to try and do everything that we can to get the board to work together, to get, you know, different members to reach a compromise, to find something that everyone agrees on. While we're, you know, not officially trained in that, we've had a lot of experience in that. But I think it's really important to go into this group of your peers, of your fellow owners who are also invested into the community, just like you are, with an open mind and willing to, you know, kind of give and take, just like our government should. It's only in the best interest of the association to get things done. And if you're struggling or if you're having a hard time, we're certainly here to help and do what we can. But it's really important that in this serving position that you take your personal feelings and you try to put those aside and make the decision that best is best for the community. As Mike mentioned, you know, that all kind of wraps into the fiduciary responsibility piece. Cooperation and collaboration, team effort, common goals, And just be respectful of one another and allow others a chance to say their point of view, and then when it comes your turn, you know, express your point of view in a calm, kind, and respectful manner, because then being respectful and being open-minded to one another is the best way that you're going to be able to move forward and collaborate as the graphic shows, and really get a lot done for your community. Working with your management company. So this is a partnership. We are team. We're team. We're on your team. We're working together. We are looking to bring our experience and value to the board. We're certainly not working against you. You've got ideas. We've got ideas. It's important that we all hear them. Establishing a point of contact is going to be one of your best ways to really streamline the communication. Oftentimes as your manager, we will, you know, kind of get, especially when emails start flying around, we'll get a ton of different direction and it's unclear to us. So if the board keeps the manager out of that communication or just included in, and then there's a person who will, you know, give the direction to the board, that's going to be your best bet to make sure that we are clear on our initiatives. Now, granted too, your manager should be reiterating and saying, okay, just to make sure that I understand this is what you want me to do. But having a point of contact and your main point person is really going to help facilitate that. Reporting maintenance is homeowner services. You know, just making sure, I know so many times, you know, the board members want their information out there, and that's important that they're there and they're listening to the owners. But by having all of the communication come through our office and documented in our homeowner services department, we document all the calls, all the emails that come in. You know, as you know, with our new phone system, we do record all of our calls. We often go through the records and reference those when we've had situations that come up, and that's proven to be a very helpful tool for us as well. But all of that communication is then provided to you at the board meeting or on a more regular basis. The managers are going to hate that I'm encouraging this, but I strongly encourage boards to consider receiving a report, you know, if not weekly, bi-weekly, of the communications that take place. Staying on top of that is just going to make it, you know, having that information in front of you is going to make you that much more confident when you're out walking your dog around the property and John, homeowner, stops you and says, you know, I've been calling the management company and they aren't coming out to repair this. Well, no, actually, they are going to come out to repair this, and they did let you know. You know, sometimes homeowners don't always get the answer that they want to hear or the immediate gratification, because as we all know, some of this stuff takes time to happen. So they want to just, they want their issue taken care of, so they're going to do whatever they can to ensure that happens. Reviewing reports and bids and asking questions prior to the meeting. So again, getting those meeting materials, your meeting materials should always be to you at least the Friday prior to your meeting, so that you've got that information that you can review it hopefully over the weekend or at the evening of your choice, prior to the board member meeting. Maybe even sending the, you know, reviewing it, sending the manager some follow-up questions so that when the time comes for the meeting, you're ready to make that decision. Things to avoid: contradiction with direction, confusing. It just confuses and stalls the process. And conversation emails to managers. Really, they should be action items. And again, that's just going to make everything more clear for your manager, and make sure that your manager is doing what is the desire of you and the rest of the board. Smooth transition. So when the board, you know, we've got some communities out there that do a really great job of transitioning one board to the next. And then of course there's situations where a transition occurs, and you know, it's maybe because a board has done some things that the owners or these folks that are coming on next agree with. But don't lose sight in that and not pass on information that is, again, this is all for the best interest of your community and your association. So it only benefits you as an outgoing board member or as an incoming board member to, extend that olive branch and work with the prior board or the incoming board and make sure that the information is transferred. Again, as your management company, we're going to hang on to a lot of that information so it won't be lost. So in the unfortunate event that there is a transition that is less than seamless, we're still going to have all of that data to share with you. But I really can't encourage it enough. This is your community, your association, probably one of your largest investments. It only benefits you to be cooperative and open-minded in this process. Understand the expectations and the voice of the owners. What have the owners said at this annual meeting that caused this change or transition? Be sure to listen and to, appreciate their feedback and what the owners are looking for. Reach out again to the previous position holder, and your management and CAI are going to be great guides for you as you step into this new role. There's a great code of conduct that CAI has put out. When Kelly sends out all of the information after this evening's presentation, we'll be sure to include the CAI code of conduct as well. It's something that we certainly encourage our boards to adapt, if not even adapt, just to discuss with one another and really consider those important points.
We're going to move on to talking about board meetings and holding those from start to finish, starting with creating the agenda, reviewing the board packet information, conducting the board meeting and ensure we're staying on task, and some fun agenda items that are worth a little bit more discussion. So we're going to prepare this agenda. We're going to also set limits on discussion within the agenda, and discuss whether or not, an agenda item should be on email or not. So the agenda is always going to be approved by the board of directors prior to the meeting. Generally, that's done just working directly with the board president. Some boards it's more collaborative and all boards are involved, and every association is a little different. Then there's no right or wrong with how you decide to set your agenda. But what should be on the agenda is things that can't be discussed via email that do need to be discussed and voted on in person. And that will just come up throughout the meetings between meetings. It's going to also include interim decisions made via email. And the one most important thing, as we said in the previous webinars, that when you're making a decision via email, make sure it is unanimous. If one board member votes against anything via email, it should be brought to the next board meeting, because your bylaws more than likely, I would say 99.9999% of the time, require a unanimous decision if taking actions outside of a board meeting. And finally, if it's on the agenda, ensure that it's part of the meeting and don't just table it. If you're going to put something on the agenda, deal with it. If you're not going to deal with it at the meeting, don't put it on the agenda and set a calendar reminder. So when we get through, next slide. When we get the agenda all finalized, the property manager like myself and Mark and Laura and our other great managers at Prospect Management Company are going to put together your board packet, which, as Laura said, is 3 to 5 days prior to your meeting, usually the Friday before. If you're meeting on a Thursday or Friday, you could expect your board packet on a Monday. It just depends on that particular manager's workload in that week, whether you get it the Friday before or the Monday prior to your board meeting. So the board packet's going to include all the supporting documents along with the agenda. That will include proposals, reports, snippets from your governing documents for any decisions that you're going to have to make that could impact a decision because you're constricted by your governing documents or your bylaws of the association and everything like that. So typically a board pack can range anywhere between 10 pages to upwards of 50, 60 pages, depending on what you're dealing with and how big your proposals are. But that information is always sent out. Next slide. That information is always sent out so you can review. As Laura said, it's vital that you review this information because it's going to make your board meetings run smoother, and it's going to make them it's going to make your board meetings run smoother, and they'll be a lot more timely when you're conducting your board meetings. So when you get this information, you want to make sure you review it and make sure everything's included. I love to think that as managers, we are perfect, but as human beings, we are inherently prone to making mistakes. It's just the nature of being a human being. So if something was missed, bring it to the manager's attention. They'll get that fixed right away. review the proposals especially included and anything you're going to be asked to make a decision on prior to going into that meeting. So you can ask those questions and get your questions resolved. So when it comes to the discussion part of the meeting, you can make a meaningful, pro or for or against position on whatever is being asked to be voted on. And then should there be any revisions made to the agenda? Was something missed that should have been added or anything like that? Just notify the manager and we can get it put on right away. What we should try and avoid is penciling in topics. We don't just want to have this, popcorning things that come up during the board meeting that we're not necessarily prepared for. So when you're actually conducting the meeting, you want to make sure you're following the orders of business. As we said earlier, the agenda should be pre-approved. You want to ensure that you're not straying from the agenda, and we see it time and time again, and I'm sure you have as well, that at your board meetings, you tend to jump around on your agendas. And if you just follow the agenda in order, it will be orderly, and if somebody wants to bring up something that's going to be touched on an agenda item, defer that conversation for that. It's going to make your secretary's job a lot easier, and it will make for a more timely board meeting. Most important thing is making decisions when you have an agenda item. Don't leave something open-ended unless additional research is needed because something came up between when the board pack came out and when you're going to be coming to a board vote, but then you just table that and then it could be done in the next one. And then finally, what I always suggest is have action items on your agenda. So for instance, if you have an action item that says review or an agenda item that says review painting bids, have the action item say approve bid to paint. So the board is aware what is being asked to be done while you're conducting these meetings. If it's a rule change, like fishing rule could be your agenda item. And then the action required by the board would be approve proposed fishing rule. So the board is clear on what is being asked and there's no confusion. So while you're conducting your board meeting, you always want to follow Robert's Rules of Order. And it's fun because I can assure you none of us follow Robert's Rules of Order as it's supposed to be followed. It's a very loose interpretation, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But you do want to have some orderly process to your board meetings, and that's why it's Robert's Rules of Order. There isn't any state statutes that says that you have to use Robert's Rules of Order. There are some bylaws out there that state that you do have to follow Robert's Rules of Order, but it's just something that is inherently known. It's no longer taught in school. I know for people who went to school in the 50s through 70s were taught Robert's Rules of Order, and then in the 80s it kind of fizzled out, and now it's just assume everybody knows what it is, just like we all know how to use computers and type. It's no longer really taught in schools. So the best thing to do though with Robert's Rules of Order is just make sure you're following your motion process correctly. Technically nothing should ever be discussed unless a motion is made and it is seconded. Then it can enter into discussion. And the reason you want to do that is because then the board president will set the time limits on what each or how long each board member can speak for or against any topic that the board's going to vote on. So it's a way to control the timeliness of your board meeting. So it could be 2 minutes per board member, it could be 5 minutes per board member, and then it would be called for a vote. The president should never vote unless there is a tie. And sometimes there's going to be issues or with boards where you have a 3-person board where the board president is always going to be a voting member because there'll always be a tie vote. And that's okay. But for your 5- and 7-person boards, board president shouldn't vote unless there's a tie. And then finally too with that is, as Laura said in the minutes, document the decisions made, not the discussions. The minutes are an official record of the association and your words can be used against you. They're called minutes for a reason and not ours. It's the little fun pun we like to say.
Can and will be used against you.
Yes, keep them short, keep them to the point, and just recap if you want to include anything regarding the discussion, just say the board discussed whatever it was. A motion was made by person A, seconded by person B. All board members voted in favor, or you say 3 of 5 board members voted to approve it, and then the motion carried. So now we're going to move on to touching on a couple of fun agenda items that just warrant a little discussion. The first one is having a homeowner forum and whether or not that's a good or a bad topic. It's a great topic because it's going to allow for your owners to share their concerns. It does have some negative aspects though, where it can consume a significant amount of time of the board meeting. Now remember, these are called board meetings, not homeowner meetings. So always keep that in mind. These are meetings for you, the board of directors, to conduct the business of the association, not for your homeowners to take over the meeting because they're upset over a decision that was made 2 years ago. And you know it's going to be a 3-hour debate with them. So what we always suggest, if you do include this item, and I do encourage that you should have this, set a time amount or a time limit on how long you're going to allow for homeowner concerns and how long each homeowner can speak for. Generally, you never want to do more than 15 minutes and don't allow an owner more than 3 minutes. And then finally, never make decisions off of whatever they're asking you to do, because that homeowner is asking you to make a decision that you're not necessarily prepared to make, nor has research been done on what they're asking you to do. So the best thing to say is thank you, and we'll look into it and we'll get back to you via email or a phone call. It's very simple and it's a great topic to have, but I understand why there are some associations out there where that's not necessarily a great topic. So keep that in mind, whether or not if it's beneficial to your association and your homeowners, should you have that topic or not. And then the other one I want to touch on, next slide. The other one I want to touch on is the any other business topic. We all have that on our agendas. I put that on my clients' agendas. But why do I do this? I don't know, because I'm a masochist, I guess. It's a catch-all. It covers all items that otherwise should have been on the agenda. When you do put the any other business item on your agenda, you're going to spend more time in your meeting. You can typically go through any agenda within an hour, but then you spend another hour, hour and a half talking about these any other business items that, you know, it might be an idea a board member has, or it might be something a board member thinks the association should be doing that you're going to spend a significant amount of time discussing, whereas you're not prepared as a board member, your property manager is not prepared as a property manager to advise you on the best course of action. So this any other business thing, I suggest you don't put that on your agendas, and if something does come up, you just defer it to email for discussion, and then either vote it via email or vote on it at the next board meeting if you know you're not going to have a unanimous decision made. It's really more so, you just don't want to make informed decisions. And when you have that any other business line item, you can make uninformed decisions. Therefore, you could potentially breach your fiduciary responsibility to your association. So with that said, I will throw it over to Mark.
Yay.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to talk about the do's and don'ts of being a board member. We're going to start with the do's. So you want to be collaborative and listen to what everyone has to say. Obviously, it's very important to work together when you're in board meetings or discussing business. You want to make sure to listen to all ideas before you make a decision so you have the most informed decision that you can. You want to utilize each other's strengths. The people that are on the board have a lot of knowledge in different areas, so learning what those are and using those to your advantage can be extremely helpful in getting business completed. And then you want to share your information with the entire board. It shouldn't just be a board member or two making the decisions or discussing the issue at hand. You want to make sure that everybody has a say. That's why they're on the board, so you can get a collaborative decision. You want to listen to advice from your manager whenever possible. We deal with these situations on a regular basis. We have multiple communities that we've seen different situations arise and have a lot of knowledge on most subjects that come up with the board, with an association or a board meeting. You want to ask your vendors questions, make sure any bid that's provided you fully understand before making any decisions. Most of the time, the vendors are more than willing to sit with the board or have a virtual meeting, whatever is needed to discuss any questions that you have before proceeding with a project or completing a task. And you want to solicit your homeowners' feedback. They're part of the association. They giving them a say not only makes them happier, it helps you fully understand what the ramifications are of a project or something happening, and make sure that everyone is on the same page going forward. You want to be responsible and plan for the future. Obviously be open to feedback, know the duties of your position that specifically, references being the board president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, member at large, property manager, homeowner. All those positions have different duties when it comes to making a decision for a association. being open to feedback is extremely important so that everybody feels heard and so that you're making sure to make the most informed decision as previously discussed. You want to be present for the meeting. You don't want to have other things on your mind when you're at the meeting, so try to clear your mind, be ready for the topics that are going to be presented, be fair and consistent. Again, this goes back to listening to what everybody has to say and taking their thoughts and statements into account before making a decision. When you make your decision, you want to think about the what ifs. What happens if we go one route? What happens if we go another? What are the ramifications of moving forward with the project or not moving forward with the project? Reserve study is extremely helpful for that. The reserve study essentially gives you an idea of what you're preparing for with your capital expenditures in the next 30 to 50 years. You want to get that reserve study updated regularly. If there's a major change to your association, or if it's been a while since you had a reserve study done, it's important to get those updated to make sure that it accurately reflects what you're expecting to happen in the future. PMI is extremely great. That's a preventative maintenance inspection. Those are really helpful for associations to make sure that any small maintenance items or regular maintenance items are taken care of timely and efficiently. A lot of associations have somebody on their property, a maintenance person, weekly, daily, a couple days a week, whatever fits with what's needed for your association to make sure any preventative maintenance is completed on a timely basis. And you want to start budgeting early. The earlier in the year that you start working on your budget, the more prepared you will be to complete it in a timely manner and have it ready for owners to expect any changes the upcoming year. And have the funds needed to make sure that you can perform all business needed for your association.
Mark, and I think it's important to point out, I just kind of thought of this, but by starting your budget early, that doesn't necessarily mean like getting out that Excel spreadsheet. Making notes. What are some of the projects? Just, start thinking and talking about the budget too.
Right, just thinking about what you're going to have to do the upcoming year. You don't necessarily need to have it on paper, but knowing what to expect is extremely important. I agree. So let's talk a little bit about the don'ts. You don't want to overstep or neglect responsibilities. That comes a lot of time from making decisions on your own. The reason it's called a board is because it's a group of people. It's not just one person making those decisions. So again, make sure you're utilizing every member on the board and their strengths to make the most informed decision on any item. You don't want to act in your own self-interest, pretty self-explanatory, but you're looking for the best solution for your entire association, for every homeowner that lives in your community. So you don't want to do something that's just going to benefit yourself. The board of directors are there to be the voice of the homeowners. So you want to make sure that you're keeping that in mind when making any decision. And obviously you don't want to use any discriminatory practices when you're enforcing fines or anything else. You have to be fair and responsible in your decisions so that everybody is treated the same. Don't skip meetings. It's extremely important that the board members attend all meetings when possible. Obviously there are extenuating circumstances, but having everybody to meeting helps make sure that every decision is as informed and just responsible as possible. Making sure everybody discusses what's happening requires everybody to be there.
And virtual meetings make it even easier.
Yes, virtual meetings, you can work from home. So there's a lot of really great advantages of virtual meetings. There's no travel time associated with virtual meetings, which is great.
Well, and Mark, you're so a lot of the times we have like internal meetings, and Mark is, as many of us know, always on the go, always out at his properties. Mark is always joining our meetings from his cell phone, from various locations throughout the greater Milwaukee area.
Yep, and having him virtual makes it possible to do that. So I'm missing very few meetings and being there to make sure my input is heard.
Yes.
Thank you. Also, don't leave it to someone else to follow up. If it's an item that you're supposed to follow up on, make sure you do that. If it's not something that you feel comfortable following up on, make sure that you discuss that with the entire group so that the right person is set to follow up on an item. You delegate tasks to make sure that everybody has responsibility and that nothing is too much for someone. You want to make sure that it's delegated enough that everybody has a say for one and has the ability to complete the tasks that were given to them. And don't be afraid to talk to your community manager. As I said before, as we've talked about through this entire PowerPoint, there's a lot of knowledge that the community manager has. We've seen a lot of the experiences time and time again, so talking to us only helps give you additional information that you can use to make the most informed and responsible decision. Make sure you're communicating. Again, don't be doing it all yourself. Don't keep information to yourself. If you have something that can be valuable to a conversation, make sure you present it. If you struggle presenting it in one way, try to find a way that works best for you and for the group, so that every decision is as informed as possible. Try to keep your meetings. Don't try to keep your meetings from homeowners. You want to be open with the homeowners. You want to help them have a say when possible, and you want to make sure everybody knows what's going on, because the most informed communities are going to be the happiest communities. So keeping everybody involved and giving them a chance. Sorry. Is gonna excuse me, sorry. My daughter's in the background. So we're talking about keeping homeowners informed. So keep your homeowners informed. You want to make sure that they have a say in the meetings, and you want to make sure that everybody hears what is going on, so that they're happy and know that the board is acting in their best interests. You don't want to withhold minutes. Try to get them out as quickly as possible. Again, having all your board members review and approve the minutes via email afterwards is a great way to get the minutes out to owners quicker. You again need to make sure you have a unanimous decision before sending those out, but then at the next board meeting, you want to confirm that decision. Any decision, again, as Mike was saying earlier, made interim in between meetings should be confirmed in the minutes of the following meeting. You want to try not to get bids yourself. It's okay to get bids, but you want to make sure that the entire group is informed as far as getting bids, and utilize your manager again to get those bids. We have a lot of great vendor contacts we work with regularly, so utilizing your manager to get bids is extremely helpful. When needed, you may want to have an attorney review them if they're very large contracts or projects, to make sure that all the language is in there. But again, your manager has been through this process, so please utilize them whenever possible to make sure that your bids are fully equipped with everything needed. Don't try to negotiate contracts on your own. Again, utilize the resources that you have at your disposal to negotiate the contracts. Property manager, attorneys, other board members, people who have knowledge working on these issues are extremely beneficial when getting contracts in place. And don't take on all responsibilities yourself. The reason, again, that you have an entire group as a board and a management company is so that you can delegate some of these responsibilities and make sure that nobody is overworked or has too much on their plate to handle what's coming up. All right, and with that being said, we're going to move on to Becca, who is going to talk about homeowner services.
I'm Becca. I'm the lead of homeowner services, and we're just going to kind of do like a brief overview of what the department's goals are, what we do, and kind of all about homeowner services.
And so for any of you who may have joined us for our association affair, we did already discuss this, but we thought this, since unfortunately our time was limited on Q&A, we wanted to be able to kind of throw this in there, since some of you may be new board members or not really clear on what it is that the homeowner services department does. We thought this would be a great time to kind of retouch on that, and also address any questions that you may have or suggestions that you may have on the homeowner services department.
So what is homeowner services? So Prospect Management created a separate and unique department, homeowner services, to specifically handle all homeowner requests and questions with basically two ultimate goals in mind: getting owners a fast and accurate response to their inquiries. Our goal is to have those addressed within the first communication, but sometimes we need to do more research or check in with other team members to get you that answer. Freeing up our community managers so they can be on-site visiting communities that they manage on a regular basis, and just tend to the overall needs of their community. So what are some department responsibilities? At Homeowner Services, we answer incoming calls and electronic communication from owners who require a response to their inquiries, manage concerns, troubleshoot significant customer service problems, and provide general information while providing you with the highest quality customer service. We have a database full of information, both historical and current, that allows us to answer most of the questions and concerns that homeowners do have. If we need additional clarification, we will reach out to the appropriate team member here at Prospect Management. And then once we receive that back from them, we do follow up and get back in contact with you. We contact owners back in the same way that we initially heard from them, unless owners tell us otherwise. What is Homeowner Services' goal? To deliver amazing and exceptional customer service to homeowners and to answer homeowner questions, comments, and concerns to the best of our knowledge and the resources at hand. And then we typically aim to respond within 24 to 48 hours and resolve matters on the first contact if possible.
That's it. That's all we got. So we'll take it over here to live and take some of your questions. So thanks again for joining us.
All right. Laura, if you could disable the...
I am. I'm here. Stop my share. Why isn't my... Here we go.
Now we can all see each other's smiling faces. So thank you all again for taking time, and I suppose you'd like...
Yay, I love all these questions.
So thank you again for taking time out of your evening to join us. So we did get 4 questions. If you do have any questions, I believe you can just click on the 3 little dots and you should have a pop-up thing that says raise hand. If you have questions, then we can ask, or you can also use a chat feature as well. So I'll just go through the questions that were sent via the chat feature that we have on Ring Central. So the first question...
I just want to add too, because I know some people aren't comfortable with the chat feature. So as we go through all these chat questions, and if you're a person who's not comfortable using the chat feature, just raise your hand and we'll come around and unmute you and you can ask your questions too.
Yep. So I'll just kind of go through the questions, then Mark, Laura, and I. Mark, if you could unmute yourself. There you go.
Hello.
Mark, Laura, and I will be answering your questions. So the first question we had was, isn't the declaration more the rules of the association over the bylaws? I'll take that because I love governing documents. That's my niche.
Nerd.
What I live for. So technically, no. I mean, your bylaws are the governance of the association, where your declaration is stating this is what the association is. So your declaration is going to define what the association owns, what your homeowner owns, usually how you're to insure, your collection procedures, should you have an owner who's delinquent, your remedies you can take within that, and a whole bunch of host of other items in there, whereas your bylaws are telling you this is how you're going to run what this is, which is what your declaration does. So your bylaws is the governance, and then you have your rules and regulations and your articles of incorporation. So your articles of incorporation are basically just saying you are a nonprofit corporation, you are a condominium association, you have board of directors, you take actions as directed in the articles of incorporation and what that allows you to do. As a board member, you're going to be bouncing between your declaration, your bylaws, and your rules and regulations. I would be shocked if you ever do reference your articles of incorporation, but if you do, kudos, that's good to review. But just be aware they are different documents and there is a hierarchy within those governing documents. So your hierarchy is always going to be your declaration is the controlling document of the association, then your bylaws, then your articles of incorporation, and then your rules and regulations of the association. And just be aware, you can have technically rules written into your declaration as well as your bylaws. Now, when it's written into those specific governing document sets, if you want to change those rules, you have to amend those specific governing documents. Like I have one of our clients, they have a pet rule that charges a $5 pet fee written into their declaration. So the only way they could remove that or increase that would be to amend their declaration. They couldn't just do it through a policy resolution. Even though it's a rule, it's in this governing document, so it has a whole lot more teeth than it does just a rule and regulation. So I hope that answers your question. I thought it was a great question because we don't always all know these different sets of governing documents, and bylaws is always a very loosely worded or a loosely used word. You always want to call them governing documents, and then bylaws are separate things within that governing document set. So the next question we had, which I thought was really good, and I'm going to let Mark or Laura answer it. And then, what do you do with condominium homeowners who are satisfied with the current board of directors, but the current board wants to step down, but there are no volunteers? What are some ideas that we could share to get more volunteers, short of standing your ground at a meeting and saying, you need to volunteer and guilt somebody into doing it, which I'm very good at when that happens?
I'll kind of go first, and then Mark, if you want to add anything in. You know, I think existing board members that are looking to step down are the best ones to campaign for their replacements. Think of people that you know in the community and approach them, talk to them, explain, you know, tell them about how wonderful being on the board is, how rewarding it is, all the money you make, right? All the kudos you receive. No, you know, really try to find those folks who would be willing to step up and kind of do your best to persuade them. You know, we as your management company, I mean, I'll tell you, I've helped to recruit board members all throughout the years as well, and I'm happy to assist any board or manager in that task as well in any way that I can. I can be very persuasive. Just ask my husband. Yeah, I think just getting out there and talking to your neighbors, finding somebody else who is really what I've always found to be your best bet for board retirement. Mark, what do you got? Hold on, you're on mute.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great idea. Also, I think, you know, a lot of the times the board members, their friends in the community are really great options. So kind of like Laura said, you know, talking to your neighbors, talking to your friends, finding somebody who may be willing to step in those shoes. Often having a board member willing to kind of assist as needed for the first, you know, month or two when the board changes over makes people feel a little more comfortable with taking on a board position. A lot of times it's just somebody maybe isn't sure that they're going to be able to handle the role, or they don't know what they're getting themselves into. So having the ability to say, you know, I'll be there for you if you need me. If you have any questions, you're always welcome to call me, can make a big difference. I've seen quite a few board members who are willing to do that, and it makes a world of a difference having them to fall back on with their knowledge that they've had from running on the board for so long. So maybe somebody who's thinking about it, by knowing that there's the possibility of flying out there, could make them more willing to step into that role. But campaigning, I think, at the end of the day, is going to be your best bet. Just talking to your owners and just trying to convince them that it's worth their time.
Another idea you could do as well, if you do have committees, ask your committee members, and if you don't have committees, seriously consider forming committees. You would be surprised if you ask owners to help, how many people would be willing to help. You know, committees are always hard to get when you've never had them before, and to get them, you know, within their own power and operating with under the board of directors. But once the committees take off, you have volunteers that will be more than willing to step up into a board role. I have one association where we have 4 different committees, and we were shocked that we had 4 volunteers for 2 positions, and everybody was very concerned that we weren't going to get volunteers and we were going to have to go and hunt people down. But you know, part of it was because of their committees and the structure they have within that association, where there's a lot of pride in their ownership, and they take a lot of pride in that, and they're willing to volunteer and serve on behalf of all owners. So use committees, and if you have questions on how to formulate committees, or you need guidance on setting up a new committee, talk to your property manager, and I can always help out as well too.
And that's a really great way to turn an unhappy owner into a happy owner. If you have somebody that's really passionate about a subject, ask them if they want to be on a committee for that item. If there's a project going on that somebody's really got a lot to say about, asking them to make them feel like they're being heard, and may end up leading to them becoming a board member. I've seen a lot of unhappy owners over the year that turned happy once they joined the board and realized how much work that the board is doing. So sometimes it's just changing their point of view a little bit.
Absolutely. All right. So the next question we have is, what happens if work that was contracted for was not done properly? And what steps can we and our management company take to ensure that the board is meeting their fiduciary responsibility? So I'll take this one because I'm just feeling the love tonight. So, you know, what can you do if work isn't done properly? We all deal with this, and really it just comes down to enforce the contracts that you sign. As board members, you guys and ladies are staring at these issues all day long. It's, you know, this is your home and you see everything. Whereas the manager, we're there once a week just kind of checking things out, and we don't necessarily notice these imperfections here and there. So just reporting that to the manager and having us work directly with the vendor. For large scale projects, you know, we are definitely more involved when you're doing major asphalt work or major painting. But when it comes down to these littler jobs, we're not necessarily going to be inspecting those every time we're out. So best thing to do is rely on your homeowners, and if you know something was done, just go out there, take a quick look, and if it wasn't done properly, let's enforce that contract and hold the vendor to what they agreed to do and what you're going to be inevitably paying them for. And that will kind of address your meeting your fiduciary responsibility, which is always doing what's in the best interest of the association. So by just simply reviewing work and making sure that this work was done according to the contract, okay, it's okay to pay the vendor, everybody has just met their fiduciary responsibility.
And again, if you need to have like a sit down with that vendor, you know, we have the virtual meeting ability now, so it's so easy to get onto a call with the vendor. So if you need to have that time with them to discuss what's been done and what you're unhappy with, most of the time that's gonna be really easy to do.
And it's kind of like snow removal is the big one right now because we all love snow and dealing with snow complaints. So that's really a big one though, but you signed a contract with the vendor. Hold them to what they agreed to. If their contract states they're going to have the snow removed within 12 hours, and if it's not done in 12 hours, go to that vendor and say, I want a discount for this month's service because you didn't abide by the terms of the contract. If they don't give themselves a clause within the contract that they can exceed 12 hours should there be, you know, snowfall over an X inch limit, whatever it would be if they don't exclude that. So it really just comes down to enforce the contracts that you sign. That falls on the manager, that falls on the board. And, you know, it's, as Laura said, this is a team effort. We are a team and we all need to work together. And I think a lot of us all work together really, really well. So hopefully that answers your question. If you have more, feel free to use the chat box thing. And then the final question we had was, is the only time a unanimous vote is required to make a decision is via email, and then all the rest of the time is via majority rules? And that is correct. So anytime you're doing anything via email, you need all board members to vote in favor, unless your bylaws state you don't, which again, as I stated earlier, it's almost a certainty that your bylaws state that decisions have to be made unanimously when done outside of meetings. And typically it's going to say in writing, and we consider email in writing. So email suffices for that requirement. And then at your board meetings, it's always majority rules, unless you have some weird bylaws that state that it's a 3/5 or a, you know, 3/4 rule. Most bylaws is always based on majority. I've never seen one that could be a higher amount, but they could be out there. You could have a very eager and overzealous attorney who wants to make life really difficult for you and makes these crazy bylaws. So they're out there. So that was the 4 questions we had on the chat feature. Does anybody have any questions? If you do, feel free to raise your hand.
Oh, we've got one.
We got one. All right, the iPad. I don't know your name other than iPad. I apologize. So I unmuted you, so feel free to ask your question.
Well, this is Arlene.
Oh,
And
hi.
many times we make a decision via email, but then there's no record of that decision anywhere in our minutes or anything. How do we go about getting that recorded so that future boards can look at that and see what had happened?
So anytime there's been an email vote, which as Mike had just stated, it's super important that unless your docs allow for otherwise, and talk to your manager about that is unanimous. You want that listed on your agenda, and then you want, so then it's reflected in your next either virtual or in-person meeting that you have. So I know some associations, because they do so much business online, one of their first agenda items is always email votes. And so they go through and they record the different votes that were done online into the minutes.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
okay.
and the one thing to add on to that too is that for these things that are being conducted via email, you don't then have to reaffirm that these actions took place. They just have to be documented in the minutes. So
Yes.
typically what I'll do is on the agenda, I'll put interim board action items, and then I'll list, 1, 2, 3, 4 ABC Avenue, replace roof, approved, and I'll put the date, the last date that the last board member gave me approval on. And then that way that just gets entered into the minutes, and that's really all you have to do. You can be more elaborate and include who made the motions or who voted in favor if you want to, but it's always going to be unanimous. Just as long as it's documented in the minutes, that's, the official action of the association is what's stated in your minutes. All right. Anybody have any other questions?
No questions for
I'm not
homeowner
seeing
services? Becca's here and ready.
Becca, you got off easy tonight. Lucky you. So, all right. Well, here we go. Mike has a question. Mike, you're unmuted.
Yeah, I was wondering, we do get notes from when homeowner services contacts their residents, but there was a time when we at least had the initials of the person that was taking the call, whether it was a call or email. Now I don't recall seeing those initials anymore. Is it possible to do that just so we know handle it, or?
So Mike, you will be able to in the future see the rep who took it. That's a new enhancement that's going to be coming out probably within the next month or two, I would say, from Vantica. The report that you're going to see is more of a report as opposed to the Excel sheet that Mark puts together, and it's going to be something that we pull directly from the software. And you, as a enhanced user, you will be able to run that report as well. So, and that will give the names of the reps.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, Becca, I kind of took your one question. Oh yeah, and she's on mute.
You can just sign to us.
Mark, or Mike, can you unmute her?
Couldn't
There you go.
I'm sorry. I was like, keep trying. Yeah, if you're in correspondence with a homeowner services rep, like if you get emails from them, at the bottom, Laura, does it not say who sent that specific email to them or replied, like when we reply back to the owners?
So owners, yes, it does. But what Mike is talking about is the activity notes reports that the managers make for their boards.
Yep.
Got it.
One day it will be perfect.
It will. We're getting there.
So, it's pretty darn good. So, all right. Anybody have any other questions? Okay. Well, Laura, I'll let you wrap this up.
Well, as always, thank you so much to each and every one of you for all that you do for your community, for coming here tonight, and for being valued clients. And if any of your fellow board members were not able to join us here tonight, make sure that they head over to our website, check out the resources tab, all of the webinars that we've put on, including the infamous Association Affair webinar. Which will just be even better next year. Each one we're getting better and better. So with that, I'll sign off and have a great evening. And if you come up with any other questions, give us a call, shoot us an email. Myself, Mark, Mike, Becca, we're all happy. We're all here to make your life easier and what you do easier, and to support you in every way that we can. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Good night, everyone.